Welcome on to Chasing Tents. My name is Abby and you find me in familiar surroundings, which is the Donington Park circuit in the UK, and you also find me in very familiar weather as well, which is very cold, very windy. Right behind me is the iconic Redgate corner of the Donington Park circuit. I'm here with Jimmy Work, a great friend, an ex-racer with me in the Endurance Championship for motorcycles with no limits, but Jimmy has decided to do car racing now, and he is racing in the MG Owners Club Championship, sponsored by Adrian Flux. Now, Jimmy himself is sponsored by his own business, which is Elixir Ink, a famous tattoo studio. And behind me is Jimmy's car, which is very pink and very black. He wanted it to look very different from all other cars. He wanted it to be visible from the moon, I think, because it does look very, very different. Well, let's show you now some scenes around the track, and then what we will do, I will take you straight to qualifying with some onboard laps from Jimmy, and then we will move on to race 1 and then eventually race 2. So that was a very cold, very windy and very damp qualifying session. First qualifying session of the year, by the way. And everyone's kind of brushing off their cobwebs, including Jimmy. So Jimmy qualified 15th out of 23 cars in his class. Now what I want to do, I really want to shed some light on this particular championship, the MG Owners Club Championship. I'm going to get Jim Baynham, who is the organizer, but he also races the MGB, and he's probably got about 40 years of experience, racing experience under his belt, around 500 races, 200 wins. He is an absolute legend. I'm going to get Jim on the mic. He's going to shed a bit more light on this championship, and then we'll take you to race 1.
Well, hi, my name's Jim Baynham. I'm the championship coordinator for this BARC MG Owners Club Race Championship. Have been for many, many years. I'm racing it myself in an MGB since 1981. So this car here, Jimmy's car, is a typical one for our championship. We run for the older MGs, and this is the Class Z car, the ZRs. This is a very typical ZR, 170 horsepower K-series engine, basically production standard, all running on Toyo tyres. There's not a great deal you can do in terms of performance modifications, strictly laid down. So it's just a matter of the drivers gaining experience, learning how to set the car up and driving a bit quicker as their experience gains. So basically standard production, plenty of them around. We've got 45 cars registered for the championship this year, including 25 ZRs, which is amazing. Certainly more ZRs than any other championship, which is really nice to see. 32 cars entered for today, including 22 ZRs. Fantastic racing, big mix. We've got new drivers, we've got 3 drivers having their first ever races today. Lots of experienced drivers, been around for many years, so a real mix of everything. But very successful at the moment, huge grid, lots of good positive vibes about the championship. The sponsors are happy, so they're happy, we're happy. And the racing today so far, first race, fantastic. Steve McDermott and Jake did a 1-2 as usual. Good luck to them. Lee Sullivan got a third, I believe. So fantastic day, more to come, onwards and upwards.
So that was Jim Baynham. What a wonderful chap, full of knowledge, very polite, and he did all that talking in one take. I did not have to cut once. He's absolutely experienced with dealing with people like me, really. Now let's move on to race 1 straight away with Jimmy behind the wheel, and he has qualified 15th out of 23 cars in his class, like I mentioned earlier. So why don't we go straight to the track and I'll show you some onboard footage. By the way, this whole day with a number of other championships like Honda Civics, and I think there's a feeder series into the British Touring Car Championship. It's all being telecasted live on YouTube, so all the footage is there. I'll probably get some footage from there and put it in this video as well. But let's move on to race 1 straight away with some onboard footage from Jimmy.
This is the best grid I've ever seen for our next championship. First of two races today for the Adrian Flux Insurance MG Owners Club Championship. MG's young and old on this grid. We've got potentially 32 cars out there for this one. It's the reigning champion, Steve McDermott, who has taken pole position in his MG ZR, and he's very proud to see his son, Jake McDermott, alongside him. Second row, of the couple of ZRs, Jack Chapman and Lewis Sharp, the youngest of the three Sharp brothers who race in this championship. Row 3, Jonathan Candler and young Riley Price. On the fourth row, Matthew Harvey and Darren Leonard. We normally see him in an MG ZS Saloon, but he is in a ZR today. Completing the top 10, very experienced MG racer Adrian Olsen alongside Doug Cole. Row 6 will be Jack Meager, number 95, alongside number 68, Lee Sullivan. A few years since we've seen him out in his ZR. Row 7 is Nick Reynolds alongside Simon Kendrick. He's in an MGF, first of the Class F cars. Row 8 is Jimmy Work and Chris Lawson, three members of the Lawson family here this weekend. An incredible grid of 32 cars. It's certainly a record for the most ZRs on a grid.
So that was race 1. It was full of action. A few cars didn't make it to the end, and safety car came into play as well. And Jimmy did really, really well. He qualified 15th, but he finished the race 8th, which is pretty good. Now he's doing some repairs on his car because I think he hit the barrier slightly right at the end of the race, but that did not affect his position. He still finished 8th. But I want to speak to not only Jimmy, who finished 8th, but also the people who finished 1st and 2nd, because it's a special team. It's a father and son team, Steve McDermott and his son Jake McDermott. So let's take you to that mini interview with Steve and Jake. Okay guys, here we are with the winner Steve and number 2 position Jake McDermott. Father and son team. Steve's been training his son for a while now, but he is the master and the defending champion as well. So I'm going to have a word with both of them. They're going to tell me what happened during that race because there was a safety car as well. It was a lot of action. A few cars didn't make it to the end. Let's speak to Steve first and then we'll move on to Jake.
Well, that's first race of the season. Really good. Me and the boy got out in front, got good gap, and cars were on point. There was a few incidents and a red flag. But we kept it together, and yeah, we brought it home. So happy days. Lap record 2. So that's a bit of the icing on the cake.
Yeah, that was a really, really good race. Start of the year, things are always going to happen, but we stuck to the game plan, got out in front, and no one looked like they was going to come and disrupt us. So yeah, it's been a fantastic weekend, and I was fighting for the lap record, and he nipped it from me by 0.001 of a second. So that shows how close it was.
So that was the very talented Steve and his son Jake. These guys are absolutely on fire. Hardly anyone can catch them at the moment. And like I said earlier, Steve is last year's champion. So let's have a quick word with the main man of this video, which is Jimmy. And I'll come back to you and we'll talk about race 2. Okay, so I'm right next to Jimmy Work, who has done really well in race 1. So he qualified 15th, as I mentioned earlier, and he finished 8th, which is epic, in a very intense race with safety cars and people going off left, right, centre. So let's have a word with Jimmy and ask him how everything went. So take it away, Jimmy.
So cheers, Abs. Well, like Abs says, after the first qualifying, it weren't great. It was really wet, really slippery. Car was all over the place. Thought, well, that was it really. I ended up qualifying 15th, so had it all to make up for in the race. Managed to get through the pack quite well. Ideally, I could have done without the safety car, but it is what it is. But managed to get up to 8th, so quite pleased with that. But we've still got the second race to go. Got it all to do again, starting at 15th, so let's see what happens.
So how it really works with qualifying and race 1 and race 2. So your quickest time in the morning and qualifying will be your race 1 position,
race 1 position,
and your second quickest time will be race 2. So Jimmy will be around similar 15th is position, 16th position, 14th. So race 2 is he starts from 14th, so he's got all that work again. So hopefully he can do a bit better than 8th this time, and we won't jinx it. Commentators curse coming up, but we won't get there. So Jimmy, all the best.
Cheers, Abs.
Let's see what happens in race 2.